For over a century, this skeleton lay in a Swedish museum, labeled as one of the most spectacular Viking warrior burials ever discovered. The grave contained everything you'd expect from a high-ranking military commander: swords, shields, armor-piercing arrows, and the bones of 2 war horses. Archaeologists used it as the textbook example of the ideal Viking male warrior. There was just one problem: the warrior wasn't male. In 2017, DNA analysis shattered one of archaeology's most persistent assumptions. The legendary Viking warrior in grave BJ581 was a woman. And fellow detectives, she wasn't alone. I'm investigating over 30 graves across Scandinavia that are forcing historians to completely rewrite the Viking Age. From cutting-edge genetic analysis to 1,000-year-old gaming pieces, the artifacts are revealing that the legendary Shield-Maidens weren't mythology, they were military reality. Fellow detectives, it's time to open the case files. Let's investigate the evidence. Case file: Birka grave, BJ581. Our investigation begins on the island of Birka in Lake Mälaren, Sweden. Here stood Birka, one of the most important Viking trading centers from the 8th to 10th centuries. With over 3,000 known graves, it's one of the largest Viking burial grounds ever discovered. In 1878, archaeologist Hjalmar Stolpe was excavating what he would later call the most spectacular warrior grave he'd ever found. Designated BJ581, the chamber grave sat prominently on an elevated terrace between the town and a hill fort. Prime real estate in Viking terms. What Stolpe found inside was a warrior's complete arsenal: a sword, an axe, a spear, 25 armor-piercing arrows, a battle knife, 2 shields. But that's not all. At the warrior's feet lay the skeletons of 2 horses, a mare and a stallion. This wasn't just a warrior. This was someone wealthy enough to sacrifice valuable war horses for their journey to the afterlife. But the most intriguing discovery sat in the warrior's lap: a complete gaming set. 28 gaming pieces and 3 antler dice. Now, these weren't entertainment. This was Hnefatafl, a strategic war game Vikings used to teach military tactics. Think of it as their version of chess, but specifically designed for planning battles. Only high-ranking officers typically possessed complete sets. For the next 139 years, nobody questioned that this was a male warrior's grave. The artifacts screamed military commander, case closed, or so everyone thought. Case file addendum, 1970s. Like any good detective, sometimes you need to re-examine old evidence with fresh eyes. Fast forward to the 1970s. Osteologist Berit Wilkens was cataloguing Viking skeletons at the Swedish History Museum when she examined the bones from BJ581. Something didn't add up. The pelvic bones, the mandible, the overall skeletal structure, they all suggested female characteristics. But without modern technology to prove it, her observations were filed away. After all, how could a grave filled with weapons belong to a woman? The very idea challenged everything archaeologists believed about Viking society. The bones went back into storage, labeled and forgotten. But the questions remained. It wasn't until 2014 that bioarchaeologist Anna Kjellström from Stockholm University decided to take another look. Using modern osteological analysis techniques, she examined every bone. The evidence was overwhelming. The skeleton showed female characteristics in multiple diagnostic areas: the shape of the greater sciatic notch in the pelvis, the angle of the mandible, the overall gracile nature of the bones. Kjellström published her findings in 2016, and the archaeological world erupted. Critics immediately raised objections. Maybe the bones had been mixed up over the decades. Perhaps there was originally a male skeleton that had been removed. Some even suggested this might be a transgender individual. desperately searching for any explanation other than the obvious. This was a female warrior. The controversy demanded definitive proof, and in 2017, science delivered it. Case File Breakthrough, 2017. Every detective knows that when witness testimony conflicts, you need forensic evidence. Enter Charlotte Hedenstierna Jonsson and her team from Uppsala University. If osteology couldn't convince the skeptics, perhaps genetics could. They extracted DNA from a tooth and an arm bone, areas most likely to preserve genetic material over centuries. The team used cutting-edge genomic sequencing, analyzing both mitochondrial and nuclear DNA. The results were unambiguous: no Y chromosome. 2 X chromosomes, genetically female. But they didn't stop there. Critics suggested maybe these weren't the original bones from the grave, so the team did something clever, exactly what any good detective would do. They compared the DNA from the tooth and the arm bone. Perfect match. These bones belonged to the same individual, and Stolpe's meticulous records from 1878, including detailed drawings and notes, matched exactly with the bones labeled BJ581. Every bone had been individually marked with India ink at the time of excavation. The team also conducted strontium isotope analysis on the warrior's teeth. This technique reveals where someone lived during different periods of their life, as different geographical regions leave distinct chemical signatures in tooth enamel. The results? This woman was well-traveled, showing mobility patterns consistent with other high-ranking Vikings. She wasn't some local woman buried with her husband's weapons. She moved across regions like a military leader would. Case file evidence, strategic gaming set. Now, fellow detectives, let's decode those gaming pieces. In any investigation, context is everything. In Viking society, Hnefatafl wasn't just a game, it was military education. The game simulates uneven warfare, with one player defending a king against superior numbers. It teaches strategic thinking, tactical planning, and battlefield awareness. As the researchers noted, complete gaming sets are often found in relation to Viking military leaders. The placement in the grave, literally in the warrior's lap, suggests personal ownership and regular use. This woman wasn't just familiar with military strategy. She was teaching it, planning it, executing it. The textiles found with the body provide another clue. The warrior wore a tasseled cap, a garment associated with cavalry commanders under the immediate authority of a royal war leader. Every artifact in this grave points to the same conclusion: high-ranking military officer. Case files expanding, multiple incidents across Scandinavia. Here's where our investigation reveals a pattern. Any detective will tell you, one case might be an anomaly. 30 cases, that's evidence of something systemic. BJ581 isn't an isolated case. Archaeological evidence reveals a pattern across Viking Age Scandinavia. To date, approximately 30 graves of women containing weapons have been discovered in Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Let me give you some examples. In Norway's western coast, archaeologists have found several female burials with shield bosses, the metal center of a Viking shield. As researcher Marianne Moen told Live Science, nobody likes to talk about them. Why? Because they challenge our assumptions. In 2019, a remarkable discovery in Denmark added another piece to our puzzle. A woman buried in a Viking cemetery on the island of Langland was found with an axe. But isotope analysis revealed something unexpected. She wasn't even Scandinavian. She was Slavic, likely from modern-day Poland. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to fight and die as a Viking warrior. Just this year, 2024, archaeologists in Skamsnes, Norway, uncovered 3 wealthy women's graves from the early 9th century. One woman was buried in a 4-meter boat made of carefully arranged stones. Her grave goods included 46 glass beads from across the known world, 11 silver coins including rare Hedeby coins from Denmark, and significantly, a bronze key, symbolizing household authority. But she also had a complete set of textile-making tools, wool shears, a spindle whorl, and a weaving sword. This tells us something crucial. Viking women could hold multiple roles: warrior, trader, household leader. The artifacts reject our modern tendency to put people in single categories. Case file: Sigtuna mass burial incident. Perhaps the most dramatic evidence comes from what can only be described as an ancient crime scene. Sigtuna, Sweden, 1998. In 1998, construction workers discovered a mass grave at St. Lawrence's churchyard. Archaeologists uncovered at least 20 individuals, men, women, and children buried together. Radiocarbon dating placed them in the late Viking Age, around 880 to 1000 CE. 11 skeletons showed sharp force trauma from bladed weapons, unhealed wounds that caused their deaths. This wasn't a peaceful cemetery. This was the aftermath of a violent attack. DNA analysis revealed 15 unique maternal lineages among the dead. These weren't all family members. This was a community that died together, and women were among the defenders. The evidence of perimortem trauma, injuries sustained at or near the time of death, on female skeletons proves they weren't passive victims. They died fighting. So what do the artifacts actually tell us about Viking women warriors? After examining all the evidence in our case files, several truths emerge. First, women were buried with military-grade weapons across Viking Age Scandinavia. This isn't regional, it's a widespread phenomenon from Norway to Sweden to Denmark. Second, modern DNA analysis has confirmed biological females in warrior graves. Not misidentified males, not mislabeled bones. Genetically confirmed women. Third, isotope analysis shows these women traveled extensively, matching patterns of male Viking warriors. They weren't staying home while men went raiding. Fourth, the presence of strategic gaming pieces and high-status grave locations indicate command positions. These weren't camp followers or ceremonial guards. The evidence points to military leadership. Fifth, the time span, from the 8th to 10th centuries, shows this wasn't a brief anomaly, but a sustained cultural practice throughout the Viking Age. The archaeological evidence forces us to reconsider Viking society entirely. The rigid gender roles we assumed? The artifacts say otherwise. Viking women could achieve warrior status. They could command troops. They could be buried with full military honors. As Charlotte Hedenstierna Jonsson noted, since the site was excavated in the 1870s, it has constantly been interpreted as a warrior grave because it looks like a warrior grave. Nobody's ever contested it until the skeleton proved to be female. The artifacts didn't change. Our biases did. How common were female warriors? The 30+ graves we found might be the tip of the iceberg. Many Viking graves are poorly preserved, and we've likely misidentified others. What made a woman become a warrior? Social status, family tradition, personal choice. The artifacts can't tell us motivation, only results. Were they exceptions or integrated into military structure? The geographic spread suggests this wasn't random, but we need more evidence to understand the system. Every year, new discoveries add to our understanding. The 2024 Norwegian finds show we're still uncovering evidence. Advanced DNA techniques are allowing us to re-examine old excavations with fresh eyes. The sagas told us about Shield-Maidens. For centuries, we dismissed them as fantasy. But the artifacts don't lie. The bones don't lie. The DNA doesn't lie. Viking women warriors were real. They fought, they led, they died with their swords in their hands, and they were buried with the same honors as their male counterparts. The next time someone tells you women warriors are a modern fantasy, remember Grave BJ 581. Remember the gaming pieces in her lap and the sword by her side. Remember the DNA that rewrote history? Because that's what artifacts do. They force us to confront the truth, even when it shatters our assumptions. Fellow detectives, the evidence has spoken. Viking society was far more complex than our simplified histories suggest. Women weren't just wives and weavers. They were warriors and leaders, travelers and traders, strategists and fighters. The investigation of Viking women warriors isn't closed, it's just beginning. With every new excavation, every DNA test, every isotope analysis, we're uncovering a richer, more complete picture of the Viking Age. And that's the power of archaeological evidence. It doesn't care about our preconceptions, it simply reveals what was. The artifacts have decoded another historical mystery, but countless more await investigation. Fellow detectives, keep questioning everything you've been told about the past, because history isn't what they told you. The artifacts prove it.